Welcome back. Well, the Transport Department is proposing that all remotely piloted aircraft systems be registered. This includes drones that have been widely used in various sectors such as security, surveilling, logistics, construction and agriculture. Well, joining us is Collen Msibi, the Transport Department spokesperson for this conversation. Ndati, thank you so much for your time. I think the first question would have to be, why the push now to get drones to be registered?
No, thanks for the opportunity. I think let's give it a proper context. The reason why there has been this media coverage on this matter, it is mainly because we've just gazetted an air freight strategy, which was gazetted, I think it was on the 25th of September, up until the 6th of November. So the reality is that, as you've mentioned, some of the areas where the drones are playing a role. So we are saying that, can't we then expand the scope so that the drones can play a role even in the mainstream economy of the country? And in this case, in the air freight. So what we've published is the air freight strategy. So the drones are just but one element of that particular strategy. So we are saying that there has to be a way of saying, what role can they play? Secondly, it is the issue of having to designate specific cargo that can be transported using drone to your house. So in other words, we focus on the first and the last mile leg in terms of what role can they play in terms of the freight value chain. So we're saying that it is one of those elements that we're looking at. There's a number of these elements, including the airport networks, there's primary networks and there's secondary networks. Your OR, your Cape Town and King Shaka are the primary airports networks in terms of the air freight strategy. So this is just one of those. So it's not about, I think the issue has been about we are regulating. No, we are defining what is the role of the air drone, or what you call the remotely controlled air traffic systems. So once we are able to define that in terms of the regulations and all those kind of things would follow.
And definitely, I think a definition is very important. As you've mentioned, various sectors use drones for various things, be it security, film. We've seen as well the BMA uses it, the Border Management Authority as well, in its regards to managing the borders in those areas. For those people and those sectors that are already owning drones, you've mentioned that there's been a gazette. What kind of changes will they face should this, definition, as you've mentioned it, take place?
So what it means is that we have a committee called the National Airspace Committee. So what it means, they've got to define the framework in terms of how the drones will be utilized. For instance, we've got to establish the rules of the air in terms of how the drones are going to be used. Secondly, you've got to integrate the drones into the airspace. There's an integration in terms of where are they going to be operating. That integration is very, very important. And then you move into the creation of the highways for the drones. So for instance, if I were to give you a practical example, if there's demand and supply on the corridor between the OR Tambo to Tshwane, we could decide that let's use R21, the road reserve, as part of the highway where the drones are going to be flying. It's one of those examples that one can put forward. But more so, we've got to create corridors, because the corridors, that's where you look at the demand and supply. So you can't just have all the highways all over the place. You've got to determine where the demand is so that you've got the corridors in that particular area. So once that is done, of course, then the issue of the job creation, it is very, very important, because, for instance, once you start registering and you want to get a permit to operate as one of those people who are going to participate, the drone pilot license is much, much cheaper than the normal pilot license. So what it means is that it's going to create jobs. More young people are going to play a role in that particular economy. So it is quite an important step in the right direction, and we believe that it can play quite a critical role in the economy of the country.
Certainly, and as well as for innovation. I think we've seen examples like Rwanda who use drones for many various things in their country, and it's an important thing. But I think for any person just listening, what are the current regulations as it stands now? Can I just go, become a drone pilot? As you said, it's quite affordable, and launch a drone into the air. What is the current regulations around it now? And how will this highway or this corridor, as you speak, aid in that?
Look, currently, CAA, that's a regulator in terms of the drones and the airways. They regulate up to about 20 kgs drone. So those drones, as you've said, some are used for irrigation in the farms, some are used for surveillance. But there is a problem. You would find that somebody can walk into any other shop and just buy a drone, and then it infringes on the privacy of people. When you find on your house there's a drone which is just flying. So those are the things that needs to be tightened by the regulator, which is the CAA. So it's one of those things. I think down the line, what we are talking about in terms of the air freight, the CAA would have to come on board to say, how do we then regulate that particular space? I must say that we've got to learn from other countries. For instance, in Rwanda, they are transporting blood using the drones to the rural areas. I mean, in Australia, there's also what you call the drone corridors. They're using the drones to transport even people. I think the maximum is about 4 at the moment. So why not South Africa? So these are things, this strategy was saying, let's explore. We've had some consultation with the industry early this year. So the reason why we're publishing is for comments, for people to comment. And then the closing date is the 6th of November. And thereafter, we'll then finalize the strategy. And then we can move to the other phase where we then look at how does this going to happen. But at the moment, we're just simply saying, let's define the scope in terms of where can the drones play a part in the economy of the country.
And definitely, it's an untapped potential, I think, for South Africa. A lot that we can do. Talk to us a little bit about, you've given those examples in Rwanda, but in an environment like ours, where can we see certain sectors already benefiting when we finally get to a point where we've got people coming to the table, we've got an opportunity to define it? What can we see coming out of this for South Africa, specifically as well for our economy and innovation?
Look, as I said, the issue is that we've got to designate specific cargo that has to be moved. The pharmaceutical sector, for instance, is going to benefit. It's going to move quite quicker, because if you've got your medication which you've ordered, you don't necessarily have to leave your house to go and pick it up. So you simply just speak to the operator of the drone and they can deliver it in your house. So it is just one of those. For instance, your cell phone, if you've ordered your iPhone from somewhere, maybe abroad, you don't necessarily have to come to the airport to come and collect that. But what it means is that the infrastructure sector would play a role, because currently the infrastructure in terms of air freight is what is lacking. The best in the country at the moment is King Shaka. King Shaka has all the systems, the processes, the scanning, in terms of how you process the air freight. So the OR Tambo, AXA had said they were going to prioritize that so that they are able to have the infrastructure in place. One of the things that we've been saying is that we've got to move the air freight from the current tonnage, which is about 350,000 to 400,000, up to 1.2 million by 2029. So that requires that we try and unleash all these elements of the strategy that I've spoken about. So it is important, including the drones. I think they would play an important role in terms of trying to increase the tonnage. So these are all including the roads freight, because you've got to look at the value chain. It's not just specific areas. You've got to look at the value chain in terms of how the road freight and the rail freight, they fit into the issue of the air freight. So that integration, it is there currently, but we think that it can do better. And secondly, we've got to harvest the data in terms of what is it that is being transported currently, because we don't know We know that there's freight that is going to the airport, but what is it? Because that is where the supply and demand issue is going to come out. So once we know, it should make it easy for us to then create these corridors that I'm talking about. Never mind the highways. The corridors would then tell you that this corridor, it is known for pharmaceutical products or what. So that's where you then start creating the corridors.
I mean, it's a little bit worrying as well when you say that at the current moment, the legislation around it doesn't even tell us what is being carried by some of these drones, but definitely an important conversation, an important proposal as well. That is, of course, Collen Msibi from the Transport Department, spokesperson, speaking to us about that proposal. Thank you so much for your time.